Good afternoon. You're watching Businessworld live here on One News. I'm Jes Delos Santos. Let's take a look at how the local bourse closed today, Thursday. All right, shares sank further on Thursday as investors took profit for a second day, pulling the bellwether index lower by 1% to 7,157 and able to hold on tight to that 7,200 level. Sell-off ensued as the Philippines still ranked as the worst place to be in, according to Bloomberg's latest COVID resiliency ranking in October. We ranked last among 53 economies. Although there are bright spots here, the report noted, especially with cases tapering off here in the country. Words from Socioeconomic Planning Secretary Carl Kendrick Chua, unable to lift sentiment here for the index. He is optimistic that there's going to be strong potential for growth in the third quarter of the year. We'll give you more details on that report later. But for now, looking at our leaders and laggards here, you have decliners at least you have decliners here overtaking our advancers for the day. SM Prime is the day's worst performer, down 4.25%. Same goes for Metro Pacific, lower by more than 4%. Ayala Corporation also in the red here. You have Bloomberg, however, holding the fort here for the main index, up by 4.6%. This is we await new restrictions here for Metro Manila government set to decide on that, of course, with alert level 3 expected to lapse here in NCR by the end of the month. Now, off to the mining sector we go. That's after the Mines and Geosciences Bureau confirmed that they are now mulling the scrapping of the open pit mining ban. And Manila Bulletin, of course, broke the story, saying it's just awaiting the signing of Environment Secretary Roy Simatu. More details on that later as well. But looking at our metal producers, not much love on the gauge here. Mining counter outpacing the slide in the main index, down by 3.6%, with only Lepanto and Philex, at least among our metal producers, in the positive territory. The rest are down. You have the likes of Global Ferronickel, Atlas, and Nickel Asia, all in the red. But again, looking at the start right here, the biggest drag to the counter is Semirara, plunging 10% to 26 pesos and 5 centavos a share. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The Mines and Geosciences Bureau, as we reported earlier, has confirmed that it will finish its draft order for the lifting of the ban on open pit mining within a week rather. MGB Director Wilfredo Moncano said that the Environment Department's technical working group has reviewed the draft administrative order to repeal the ban. Moncano said the agency is now working on some minor corrections before submitting the draft order to Environment Secretary Roy Simatu this week. MGB says it's pushing to lift the ban on open pit mining to help boost the country's economic recovery from the pandemic. Moncano has earlier said that open pit mining is a globally accepted method of mining, with more than 1,000 open pit mines all over the globe. He claims that it's also one of the safest methods. Meanwhile, Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion is backing calls for a downgrade to Alert Level 2 in Metro Manila as the downtrend in COVID-19 cases continues. Concepcion says alert level downgrade allows additional indoor and outdoor capacity in establishments, which could help more businesses recoup their losses during this pandemic. If Metro Manila is placed under Alert Level 2 starting next month, indoor establishments will be allowed 50% indoor capacity on top of an additional 20% as NCR's vaccination rate hits 70%. Concepcion said indoor business establishments are also allowed an additional 10% if it carries a safety seal, bringing the possible maximum capacity to 80%. Outdoor venues are allowed to operate at 70% capacity regardless of the vaccination status of customers. Representatives from different business sectors support the call, saying it will provide more earnings for workers who have temporarily lost their jobs or are still working on alternate shifts rather. And Socioeconomic Planning Secretary Carl Chua says the country's economy is showing strong potential for growth in the third quarter as looser lockdowns allowed more employees to go to work. Chua says the country should prioritize further reopening of the economy over extending aid through fiscal stimulus. He notes that consumption, investment, and revenue are likely to be lower in the next 10 years due to decreased demand in sectors that require physical distancing, like dining, tourism, and transport. The NEDA chief says economy will recover late next year or early 2023, but return to the pre-pandemic growth path is expected in a decade. Chua admits that the agency is concerned about rising food and oil prices, and to ease inflation, he is now calling for the temporary increase in fish imports and easier transport of pork imports outside Metro Manila. Now, even the Bangko Sentral is painting a rosy picture for the Philippine economy. BSP Governor Ben Jokno says the economy is now showing concrete signs of recovery on the back of accelerated vaccine rollouts as well as the implementation of granular lockdowns. Jokno says these measures, together with the continued implementation of health and safety protocols, have allowed the domestic economy to gradually reopen and for workers to regain their jobs. He says foreign direct investments have been affected worldwide due to the pandemic, and the Philippines is now studying the FDI decline to help policymakers design appropriate responses that would attract more investments and spur post pandemic recovery. Jokno says certain industries, including the BPO sector, could contribute to recovery, with BPO receipts expected to grow by 5% this year and in 2022. Meanwhile, Bloomberg's COVID resilience ranking shows that the Philippines is still the worst place to be in amid the pandemic in October. This is the second straight month that the country is on the bottom of the list of 53 economies tracked. The October snapshot showed that while other ASEAN nations continue to rank low, the Philippines fares among the worst on vaccine coverage, with just about 26% of the population covered amid challenges in bringing the shots to areas outside of big cities. Is the country really recovery bound as COVID infections continue to decline and because restrictions continue to ease? Time to pick the brains of RCBC's head of economic research, Mike Ricafort. Good afternoon, Sir Mike.
Hi, good afternoon, Jess, and to your viewers.
We have the Banco Central and NEDA both pointing to recovery here, whereas Bloomberg, in its October study at least, shows the Philippines still is a worse place to be in due to COVID. How do we reconcile this?
Well, Jess, it's interesting to note that we have been seeing also green shoots already or bright spots in the economy. I'm talking about, we have seen OFW remittances on a monthly basis. They're already near record highs. Same goes with exports, close to record highs, as well as imports. Although the import bill may have been bloated by higher commodity prices, that's a consideration. If you look at manufacturing, it's almost back to pre-COVID levels. So at least there are already early signs of some pickup as the economy reopens further. And there's already some optimism that the alert level 3 in NCR would be eased further, initially to alert level 2 as early as November, and eventually as well, it could even be lowered or eased further to alert level 1 by December, as signaled
Mhm.
by some of our health officials. Now, on top of that, Jess, of course, it's really the numbers that would justify all of these reopening. We have already seen the number of, well, at least the vaccinations, fully vaccinated in the country is at least 24%. Those with the first dose at 24 million, or 24% rather. So just give it a few weeks. Most of the vaccines just 3 to 4 weeks before they get their second shot. Maybe for AstraZeneca, it would take 2 to 3 months. Maybe as early
Mhm.
as the end of the year, those with the first dose all be added into the fold of the fully vaccinated people. So therefore, as early as December, the country may already reach 50% fully vaccinated people.
Okay.
And Metro Manila is already into population protection. We're already
Mm.
by the end of the year, it's even possible to see population. Well, it's not just population protection, but towards herd immunity. That's already the leveled up target for Metro Manila.
Great.
So
So lots of positive, at least markers here that we have to actually support the claims, at least of the BSP and the NEDA. But what's interesting here, at least in the words of Chua, is saying there's a strong potential for growth in the third quarter. This, despite, of course, strict restrictions back in August. Where do you see that growth parking for the quarter?
we're estimating, Jess, around 6% to 7% in the third quarter. After about, of course, it was 11.8% in the second quarter due to the very low base effect because that was really the brunt of the lockdowns last year. Now, we have seen already some reopening of the economy starting June of last year. The only difference is, of course, the base effect may pick up a bit, so therefore the year-on-year growth would moderate a bit also, but that's still
Mm.
fairly decent at 6 to 7% year-on-year. And of
Mm.
course, the difference, one of the key differences also this year as against last year, we already have the vaccines, and uh, also cases have already eased lately. That would just already at 5 month lows. It has been hovering between 3,000 to
Mm.
5,000 on most days, and it looks like the trend is still easing further in
Mhm.
view of that because it would give greater protection to many people in the country. More people would be vaccinated, and they would they
Mhm.
and there are even plans to increase further the daily vaccinations
Mhm.
from 500,000 per day to 1 to 1.5 million per day. So that's gonna really expedite the
Mhm.
targets.
Okay.
It could, yeah. So yeah,
Mhm.
go ahead, Jess.
Okay, well, there are, of course, a lot of reasons here to actually be optimistic that we might actually see some level of growth, or a good level of growth rather, for the third quarter. On the flip side, you have one other major concern. You have a current streak of price increases in fuel. What are the risks here on growth and inflation?
Yeah, true, Jess, because that's part of the recovery story. As more people around the world, the massive vaccination, more countries are already about to reach herd immunity in a few months' time, maybe later this year or early next year. For the Philippines, it could be as early next year, even before the elections for the herd immunity, if the vaccinations are indeed accelerated further. So those are the challenges. There's this recovery on the demand side for various commodities and products. However, the supply side has yet to catch up uh, because the pandemic has impaired somewhat uh, some production,
Mhm.
manufacturing, and of course, as people got sick, unfortunately, some people who passed away, some of them are at their prime in their productive years. And at the same time, of course, the pandemic has really disrupted many industries, starting from power, as there's a crunch right now on energy rather, like oil, natural gas, on the exploration side, on the production side, like semiconductors, electronics, and if you transport on the logistics side also, because there are quarantines before. That's why there are queues right now for cargo ships in the ports. It's taking them quite some time to unload
Mhm.
their cargo. Otherwise, they would have been moving around, so that reduced the supplies of. All in all, that kind of impaired the supplies worldwide. It's
Okay.
because what would be the solution for all of this? It's really increased vaccination towards herd immunity because that would somewhat bring back towards normalcy the supply chains, no, for
Okay.
many industries, and hopefully that would also ease the restrictions on logistics and on the movements in ports. Like some ports are require quarantine for some of the
Mhm.
ship workers to unload some of their cargo.
Right.
So
But I guess
and yeah, go ahead, Jess.
The more important question here, of course, you have the government already trying to unleash a number of measures here. Some may even consider band aid measures from giving discounts and cash aid for PV drivers. But the big question really is about suspending the excise taxes on oil for now. Can we afford to do that? Can we forego the revenues from excise taxes on oil so as to temper at least the rising cost of fuel?
Okay, it's a very delicate balance, Jess. That's why everybody there are two views right now on the supply side disruption. Hopefully, this would only be transitory until the winter time,
Mhm.
and that would also coincide with the massive vaccination towards herd immunity for many countries towards early next year. So hopefully by springtime, around February to March, uh, that would be a matter. That would be the moment. That would be the moment of truth in finding out, indeed, if those supply side disruptions would already start to ease, or would indeed be transitory and already help ease prices. Because for now, during the winter, it's really inevitable to purchase
Mhm.
energy supplies. So
Okay.
yeah, that's one. That's one consideration. And secondly, of course, it's a delicate balance to manage both inflation and of course, higher inflation would eat up the recovery story also. That's what would otherwise be spent for disposable income would go paying for higher prices of oil, energy, and other imported commodities. But nonetheless, that's supply side driven rather than higher demand.
Mhm.
So the impact on the fiscal side, if let's say if you are to simulate foregoing more than 100 billion pesos in excise taxes for oil per year, that's equivalent to around at least 0.5% of GDP. So that's going
Mhm.
to widen the budget deficit, and that's going to
Mhm.
add to the country's debt, and that's going to add to the country's debt to GDP ratio.
All right.
Currently at a little over 60% of GDP. So those are the
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a big balancing act for government if at least they are going to pursue talks on suspending, even for now, the excise taxes on oil. Thank you very much for your insights this afternoon. Great insights as always, of course. RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort. Thank you, sir, Mike.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jess, and to your viewers, and always stay safe.
And those are the biggest stories this trading day, October 28, 2021. Catch Business World Live again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jes Delos Santos, and we are on News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.